I love games, not just as an art form, but as a medium that shapes human experiences and connections. Nowhere was this more evident than in handheld consoles. While consoles have a rich history, it was handhelds that pioneered into socializing its customers. Nintendo managed to utilize an interesting approach to innovation with their Blue Ocean business strategy. By striving for uncontested and undiscovered markets, they made successful innovations by incorporating features like motion controls, touchscreens, and even portable handheld consoles. While Nintendo's innovations often brought families together, handhelds stood out by redefining community, bringing people together in ways competitors never did. Early on, Nintendo established themselves as a dominating force, specifically with their creation that became an icon for all consoles. I'll never get over all of my family calling every console I ever had a Game Boy, but looking back on it, it's no surprise given how revolutionary and dominating this pocket console was. The Game Boy was the first to succeed, and inevitably dominate in the handheld market. Alongside its initial release, the link cable also debuted. Whether Nintendo knew it or not, this defining piece of technology would shape the industry and inspire what made these pocket consoles so memorable. It's self-explanatory that being able to play away from home and without having to lug around consoles and those awkward 90s TVs was revolutionary. Before, you'd have to get to know people, trust them enough to go over or let your kids over to others' houses, and trust them with expensive hardware. The Game Boy and its link cable alleviated all those prerequisite obstacles and came out during a social drought in gaming history. Before the first graphical MMO in 1991, and after the decline of the arcade around the mid-1980s, Nintendo's link cable introduced itself as the lone competitor to classic couch co-op in 1989. The introduction of the Game Boy and its link cable changed everything. Suddenly, competition and cooperation alike were taken away from the home and even brought abroad. The arcade experience of sharing strategies, having local champions and mentors, and flexing prowess was revived on playgrounds, study halls, and break areas. It was the beginning of an era where mutual ownership was a form of community that invited friendships naturally. However, I was too young in the early days of the GBC and only saw pieces of the GBA era, but I witnessed the exact same experiences on the DS and more. And given perspective, I know for a fact that there were definitely some nerds sharing Pokemon teams and Tetris scores in office break areas. After the Game Boy's inception as a two-pronged assault into new technologies, both the handheld and local multiplayer markets, it became clear that the two partnered well. Building on the Game Boy's successes, Nintendo introduced the DS, aiming to enhance localized play with new features. Download Play was Nintendo's way of expanding their player market by allowing temporary ad hoc game sharing and encouraging their customers to foster an inclusive community. With Download Play, one cartridge let DS owners share multiplayer games or demos locally, encouraging inclusion and interactivity. The famous example was Mario Kart DS, allowing DS owners with and without the title to race against each other, while owners of the game could choose their character and those without were forced to play as a shy guy. This allowed for inclusivity and gave players the chance to try before they buy, doubling as both a marketing strategy but also as a step towards furthering player interaction and intimacy. This same mentality was probably behind the freeware PictoChat, which came with every DS and allowed for DS owners to form chat rooms in their local range. They could text and draw for each other, and upload to a scrolling forum, further pushing a sense of community between all DS owners, not just those who purchased a piece of software or a physical game cartridge. I personally grew up in school with the DS and remember many a bus ride with Mario Kart, where even friends who preferred other titles were allowed in on the fun. There were car trips where silent conversations were tapped and drawn entirely by PictoChat to keep our parents unaware of our childish schemes. Having to be present and being able to invite and include anyone with a handheld was heartwarming. There was an innocence to that inclusive design that I desperately miss with modern handhelds. Still, nothing compared to the golden era with the 3DS. Learning from the DS, Nintendo incorporated more preloaded freeware all players could enjoy, kept the DS's features and software in its own submenu, and offered a new innovation that was my favorite by far: StreetPass. StreetPass allowed for two passerbys to brush digital shoulders and pass information. This would first share to StreetPass Plaza, one of the preloaded softwares, and would share the players, a message, and a chosen game. There were also mini-games in Plaza that required StreetPasses to progress. But the real kicker was how developers incorporated the feature into their games. Fire Emblem was a favorite of mine. In Awakening, StreetPass players with Awakening save data could transfer their armies, and then they could be traded with, recruited, and challenged by other players. Other games like Kid Icarus Uprising had similar features, allowing the sharing of weapon gems. Or in Bravely Default, which had an entire minigame built around reconstructing a town using StreetPass. This allowed commuters, students, and park enjoyers to unknowingly interact on common ground. There was something unfathomably beautiful about meeting without ever meeting with other 3DS owners and seeing what they were up to. Like that one Smash addict finally picking up a new game you love, like Bravely Default, or seeing someone you know grinding Monster Hunter, or randomly crossing paths in an airport and wondering what Shin Megami Tensei is. Over time, you'd construct personalities of these people in your head, and whether a friend introduced you later, you were dead on, or they simply faded from memory, those experiences were unique to StreetPass, and connotated an era where Nintendo really focused on bringing people together, even as world culture moved ever apart. So what came next was certainly a shock. As game stores closed and online lives dominated our real ones, the Nintendo Switch launched. It was another innovative and impossible, never successfully done before project seeking to combine the pocket and home console into one package. It easily outsold the previous generation, meaning it eclipsed the 3DS and Wii U combined in units sold. It still had local play and improved greatly on online features, and yet something was missing. Something had changed. There was no more StreetPass or download play. The Switch had zero preloaded software. The system lacked localized social features entirely. Despite being one of my most played consoles, the Switch felt lacking because of these missed opportunities. How many times have you wanted to play games you or friends don't own on your own console? How many times have you missed that illuminating green light, notifying that you've just passed a fellow Nintendo owner? How many times have you wondered why the Nintendo Switch abandoned the established culture of its handheld predecessors? By no means is the Switch a failure or disappointing. Again, it's the console I probably have the most hours on. But the loss of intimacy, of inclusivity, and the general abandonment of community has been disgusting at best. We've seemingly gone backwards. A long time ago, we had to play Animal Crossing in person. Then we could get by just brushing shoulders. And now we're stranded on islands scattered across the World Wide Web. While I can appreciate online play, as someone who's been playing PC games since 2016, as platforms of connection, in spite of impossible scenarios, I desperately want to return to times where we had to get out to enjoy each other's digital company. Just like with the death of arcades, there's again a lack of intimacy in gaming. Game stores are closing, social features are being removed, and more we are being regulated to play from home or alone. If I want to get closer and talk about games with like-minded folks today, it's not impossible. Still, I mourn the loss of a gaming culture that prioritized localized community and intimacy built by Nintendo's handheld innovations, now seemingly left behind. I miss seeing strangers pop up on my 3DS and seeing what folks are up to, and getting a feel for gaming community in my area, or inviting friends and strangers to try a game with me through download play. I wish these features were included on the Switch, but as of now, it's just another missed opportunity. Those same opportunities for new friendships and chances to share experiences with people around me are seemingly gone forever. All I can do is hope that developers recognize or remember the value of those lost features and find ways to incorporate the intimacy handhelds once had in future games and platforms. And until then, all I can do is wait and see what happens.